So everybody has their hopes for E3 this year, with just hopes for like a new Animal Crossing, a new Pikmin, Pokemon Stars, pretty much everything. But the 7th gen came out last fall, and there hasn't been any word on a new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. And the last one came out, it was a little bit ago. Yeah, it was a little bit ago. So I think we're due for a new one pretty soon. I'm not sure this year, but definitely next year, if not the end of this year. So I'm going to talk about Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon. So I think the story is the second best in the series. Like, the story is pretty fast-paced compared to most other games. Like in this game, it pushes you forward and forces you to progress instead of letting you sit back and grind. The game isn't as difficult, and I think that the fast pacing helps with that. Like, don't get me wrong, being able to sit and grind is pretty good, but the fact that the game is, in my opinion, easier than previous games, and the fact that they force you to progress, it's like, instead of it's better than other games a little bit, I guess. Of course, this is all subjective. So overall, I think the story is second best. I'm not sure. The pacing is really up to you whether or not you like it. I personally like it because I think it keeps everything moving along and smooth, so you don't grind so long that you forget what was even going on in the story. Like, they really try with this story, but I don't think anything will ever be as powerful as Darkness, Time, and Sky. Another thing with this game is that recruitment is easier. Instead of defeating Pokemon to recruit, you just automatically get them after missions. And I like this because in the old games you could go around killing a ton of enemies and never get the Pokemon you wanted to be on your team. But also at the same time, if you're just trying to grind, there would be all these annoying Pokemon that would keep asking to join your team. And then even in the original games, Red and Blue, Pokemon would only join your team if they were like basic Pokemon. I'm not sure about baby Pokemon. I think it was baby Pokemon and basic Pokemon, but like for example, like Elekid would join you but not Electabuzz. Although it's been a little while, so I could be a little rusty. Now, one of my biggest complaints is that they do not have nicknames. This is something they need to bring back. Like, I know not everybody likes nicknaming, but I liked nicknaming. And also, in Super Mystery Dungeon, you don't get him for a long time, but this is the easiest game to get Kecleon in. For the sole reason of you don't have to kill him. Because everybody that has played Pokemon Mystery Dungeon knows that Kecleon is the biggest pain ever to try to recruit or even steal from. Although, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would just steal and then use a pure seed to warp right next to the stairs. I mean, I did that a couple times because I'm greedy. They also have Pelipper Island, which is basically where you can stop and grind away from the main story. So that's good. And I think you can also send out Pokemon from your game to help other people through Street Pass and online. So, I mean, that's a little way of grinding if you don't want to just keep progressing the story. They also have Wonder Mail, which has been around forever, where you just enter passcodes and you can do special missions or rescue people online. Also, returning is the jukebox. I think you get it later in game, although I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure the jukebox debuted in Explorers of Sky, and the one in Explorers of Sky was pretty good, but this one has songs from past games, including key final fights. So I would say it's improved from the one over Sky. Although I have to say, a lot of the older songs that it has are from Gates to Infinity, and among Pokemon Mystery Dungeon fans, Gates to Infinity is not very well liked. So take it as you will, but there are still plenty of songs, even if you don't like those ones. One thing about this game that makes it so it's hard for me to go back to older games is the fluidity in the movement. Everything in the 2D games, it's not that I mind the pixels, it's just the movement feels stiff compared to the newer games. Starting in Gates to Infinity is when they brought in the 3D models, and ever since then, I haven't been able to go back. So I don't think we're gonna go back to the 2D style, at least anytime soon, if ever. So I definitely like the way it feels when you move around. So one thing about this game is that it has a bigger overworld. Now, some might say that having a bigger overworld is good because it builds the world and it feels real and you don't feel like a Pokemon living in one tiny village when there's a whole world to explore. But it ends up being a nuisance because if you want to go to a dungeon, let's say you want to go to a dungeon that's on Mist Continent and you're on Water Continent, you have to go down to Lapras, travel all the way there, which you can speed up travel, but then you have to walk through that town to go to that town's select screen to get to select the dungeon. And it's kind of annoying when you have several different missions and you want to see which one you want to do, and every time you want to go somewhere you have to keep traveling back and forth and back and forth. And I mean, you're really not going to visit these overworlds once you finish the all the missions in that area. There's nothing unique there to go back to. The main hub world in the overworld, like the main continent that you live on, everything you need is there. All the same buildings are pretty much on every continent, so there's no reason to go back to them. And I think it's kind of a waste. So I don't mind a bigger overworld, I just think that they should improve travel. And also make it so that the world feels alive and it's not just a copy and paste. Another thing that this game, I praise this game for, is that in the overworld there's a lot of references. Like if there's characters that you know from other games in the series, like for example like Quagsire or like Rampardos, if you go talk to them you can see that they're clearly referencing them in the older games. Well, not referencing them, I mean, if you look at it in a certain way, it's like actually them. Although there were some characters that were in the other games, but they didn't seem to make references to it. So, and I'm not sure why, but I'm guessing that's just a missed opportunity on localization or something. So, another thing that I praise this game for, but it's also a little bit frustrating, is that money is a lot harder to obtain in this game. Maybe I'm just going about it wrong, because I know there are items called gold bars which you can sell to get currency, but I just think money is a lot harder to get and things are expensive. And I don't mean items, I mean moves, because you're gonna want to have the best moves and they cost thousands of Poké Dollars, and also many TMs break, so you're really going to be starving for money a lot in early game. But I do praise it for this though. I do praise it for having money hard to obtain, because I felt like in previous games it was way too easy to get money. Like at endgame, when I was just dinking around in dungeons, I would just have way too much money in the bank and it was just sitting there, and now I'm starving for money because I want to have good moves on all my Pokemon, and there are hundreds of Pokemon on my team. A new thing that was introduced in this game was looplets and emeras. And they're optional, which is good because they can make the game easier if you want to use them. Like, the looplets can have different effects, like they can raise special attack or prevent poisoning and such. And then the emeras, which are like little jewels or something, you put in the looplets and they can give you extra effects, like they can locate all items on the floor, or they can boost your attack. But the thing with emeras is, the emeras break after the dungeon, so you don't get to keep them all. So every dungeon, you're constantly looking for emeras, and I feel like with the amount of emeras that are in every dungeon, they really encourage the use of them. And they do make the game easier. Personally, I use them because it makes me have a good time. I think that they're a good replacement for gummies, because in previous games, you would eat gummies to increase IQ, but you'd have to eat a ton of them before anything good really happened. And that was just for the individual Pokemon, and if you had a large team, you would need a ton of gummies, and they were type specific also. So it just made things complicated, and they were expensive, and I feel like emeras are the answer for gummies. And emeras are also how you trigger Mega Evolution in this game. You can, once you attach the emera, the Pokemon becomes Mega, or if the Pokemon does not have a Mega form, it gets insanely powerful anyway. But once the power from the Mega Evolution wears off, the Pokemon just goes berserk, and that can sometimes backfire, but usually you're fine. Usually you just end up punching walls and it's fine. So, relating to if Sun and Moon, which I'm pretty sure they will, if and when they get a Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game for 7th Gen, I'm thinking if they do keep looplets and emeras, maybe they could make an emera that has a Z move, or maybe just a hold item that allows you to use the Z move, like a Z Crystal, or maybe a Z Crystal Emera. I don't know if they're gonna keep this idea. Like, there was something called a V-Wave in Gates to Infinity that they just straight up scrapped, so we'll have to see. Another topic is gold bars, which is another kind of currency that's a little bit harder to obtain, but not really. If you like to play the game a lot and you grind enough, you're just gonna accumulate them pretty easily. And you just find them by walking onto sparkling spots in the dungeon. They are easier to get than Pokédollars in my opinion. And they have really good rewards. They have like food items that can increase stats. You can buy like looplets with them. You can buy like iron and zinc and all that. So you definitely want to pick it up if you have the opportunity. A new thing in this game is a Luca token, which is relates to Hawlucha. He's in this game to help you relearn moves and learn moves that you can't normally learn. And when you use the Luca tokens, which you can get with gold bars, you can change abilities on Pokemon. So if a Pokemon you recruited has an ability and you're like, I don't really like this one, you could pay gold bars, get a Luca token, and switch the ability, and then you'll be like, yes, finally this Pokemon is viable. But also, relating to Hawlucha, relearning moves is free, which is good. Which is really good because when you're starving for money, you really need it to be free. But the bad thing is that if you want to learn moves that can only be learned through TM, or I think also egg moves are available, they are really, really expensive. There are thousands of Pokédollars, so you're really gonna have to save up or maybe just choose a select few that you really want to use. There's also something in this game called a progress device, which it's better than a quick save, which was in previous games, because you can save there and it's not going to disappear. Like, it's an actual save that you can turn off power and the save will still be there. So when you're in the middle of a dungeon, it can really save you. Although the downside to having the progress device in this game is that there is no quick save. So if you're in the middle of a 99 floor dungeon and you don't have a progress device, well, you're gonna have to either finish that dungeon or put your game into sleep mode and come back later. I think that they should bring back quick save in the next one. Like, you should have an option to save in the middle of a dungeon. Because, I don't know, they've always done that. Why would they get rid of that? I think they should still have the progress device, but they should either be expensive or also have other limiting factors, because we don't want to overuse the progress device if we're going to have quick save too. But there should definitely be an option for quick save. In this game, there's also tiny reviver seeds, which are cheaper than regular reviver seeds, and they can often be useful. It'll revive you without restoring your hunger and your power points. And you might say, well, why wouldn't you use a regular one? Well, let me just say this. In a game when it's hard to get money, using tiny reviver seeds when you can is way better on your wallet than using the regular reviver seeds all the time. They kept boxes from previous games, which I like. I like boxes. I like the thought of, you know, giving a box to the box opener and being like, ooh, what am I gonna get? You know, usually it's something pretty good. So, I mean, pretty sure pretty much everybody just wants boxes to stay. There's also something called move growth, which was introduced in Pokémon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity. And basically, if you use the move Tackle a ton of times, it'll power up and it'll have more power points, more power, more accuracy. Although I think it's random what goes up and when, but it does have a blanket effect across your whole party. So if you have a team with a whole bunch of Pokemon that have the move Crunch, and you use Crunch a lot, your whole team is just gonna like reap the benefits from using Crunch a whole bunch. Wow, that rhymed. There's also a new thing in Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon called Meow Theater. Now, I think this is pointless, in my opinion. I haven't really used it. It's just going into one of those dungeons that sets you at level 1, doesn't let you bring any items, and is like, here, fend for yourself. I never really liked those because I like having the security of having items and having my good moves. And the only real gimmick to it is that you can record it and show it off online, and then people can download it and watch it. But it's kind of pointless in my opinion, so I wouldn't really mind if they got rid of it. Dungeons. I have to say that in a lot of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games, the layouts can sometimes feel similar. Definitely in some games, especially in Gates to Infinity. I found that in Gates to Infinity, because I did like to play it for a time, because like I said, the movement drew me in, the fluidity in the movement. So I found out that while playing Gates to Infinity, that some dungeons generate exactly the same. Like, I'm not even kidding you, they generate exactly the same. The whole point of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is that it's like, oh, this game has randomly generating dungeons, and what did they do? They literally made the dungeons generate exactly the same. So I feel like the dungeons in this game I feel like they generate a lot more randomly. They don't have a lot of those annoying, like, pesky dead ends. They have way less of those. I feel like they're just more fair overall with the, you know, the items that you have available. I feel like there isn't just tons of cheap things going on all the time. Yeah, the looplets and emeras definitely help. And like I said, the looplets and emeras, if you choose to use them, you can make the game as easy or as hard as you want, if you want to use them or not. Because the game can still be really hard if you choose not to use them. And later on in the game, it still gets hard even if you have them and use them. Even if you're really high leveled and you have a good team. There's a new thing in this game introduced called a treasure collection, which you get, I think, post-game, or pretty close to post-game if not, which you go into hard dungeons that have like a legendary or a boss Pokemon, and then when you defeat them, you befriend them, but you also get like a supposed like legendary item, and then when you get all of the said legendary items in a certain set in the collection, then you get another special item. Although the special item that you get for completing a set doesn't really do anything. I guess it's just kind of a trophy, it's just kind of there. Although the actual treasures you get are pretty good because they're usually stat boosters or looplets that increase certain stats. So it's an incentive for you to keep going, but if you have Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon and it's not your first game, I'm pretty sure you would just be going to complete it overall anyway. There's also another new thing in this game, which is where Pokemon get pumped every once in a while, which is at the beginning of a day, the game will tell you that 3 specific Pokemon will give you more EXP. So every time that Pokemon defeats an enemy, you get 3 times the EXP. And sometimes there's an unknown put in the mix, and it says if there's an unknown that's, you know, pumped for the day, it gives you a 6-time EXP bonus. But unknown only has hidden power, and if you haven't powered up hidden power, it is kind of weak, and it only has 15 power points. So it's kind of not useful because it's just gonna die. It's way easier and faster to choose your team in this game than other games. Instead of having to go to a Pokemon and tell them which one you want, and it's like ding ding, this Pokemon, you're on the team now, and it's like scrolling through all this text. It's just a lot simpler. You can just go down into the menu anytime you want in the overworld, and you can choose your team. And then also, before you go into a dungeon, it'll also give you the team select screen as an option, just, you know, so you can make sure that you choose the right team and you don't go in forgetting to change your team. And it's very fast, and you can sort Pokemon easily, and there's no extra text to scroll through, and I just find it was made very streamlined. Now, the only problem that I have with this game in regards to team selection is that sometimes Pokemon won't be available. Just for whatever reason, Pokemon will sometimes not be usable. They'll just be gone, and it'll be like, oh, you can't use this Pokemon today. And that can be kind of frustrating, but they do let you have several teams of Pokemon that you can create, so you can just scroll L and R and just choose the one you want. So you don't have to fidget with team selection every time if you don't want to. Also with this game, there are no request boards. You can't just choose a request of the please let me see my love, like escort the Nidoran and hope the Nidoran doesn't die kind of quest. There's no quests. Everything are specific missions that are given to you, and well, with these missions you always recruit at least 1 Pokemon, which is good, but after post-game, as you slowly do all the missions, you realize that there's pretty much nothing you can do. So instead of grinding and getting rewards, you kind of just grind on your own. You just grind because you want to. You don't grind because there's a promise of, you know, extra reviver seeds or extra money. You just grind because you feel like it, I guess. There's also something new in this game called a connection orb, which every Pokemon you've met is registered in this connection orb, and it's kind of like a giant spider web, like starry sky looking thing of every single Pokemon you have met, and ones that have joined you will be in there. It's kind of pointless in my opinion. You can check stats and everything, but the connection orb is necessary because it's how you get the missions to do. You have to go in there and like manually select them and be like, yes, I'd like this mission. So I guess it's better to have connection orbs than to have request boards, because request boards would have to be posted in every single overworld probably, and that would make everything a little bit more annoying. The last thing I'd like to talk about is one of the best things, in my opinion, they have added to this game, and that is how all Pokemon share experience. Now, it sounds bad. It sounds like EXP share in the newer games, where you just glide through everything easily. But when you have like 400, 500, 600 Pokemon on your team, you want them to all get experience, and pretty much you can't do that. So them all sharing experience is really helpful. So this is definitely something I'd like to see them keep. My final thoughts: Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon is the best game in the series, almost. If it wasn't for the lack of ability to nickname, and also the story just not being as good as the other one, I would say that this is perfect. But there are definitely a few little gripes that I have. So I would like to see these things fixed in the next game. I'm not saying the next game has to have an amazing story, although I would love that. I would just like a good Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game that I can just sit and veg with and love.